I think is a choice. You could choose to conquer. You could choose to do more. You could choose to make an extra effort to do something exceptional. It's quite delusional to fantasize about exceptional outcomes while engaging in mediocre behaviors.
That's what a brilliant line. And then to be upset when it doesn't meet your expectations. You need to reframe that.
Today I'm chatting with Greg Jackson from Jackson Wink. Yeah, the gym, the MMA gym that everyone in the world knows about, heard about for years. Greg told me he started that gym over 30 years ago. Been training, helping people win titles, win championships, kick ass. We were chatting a little bit about this company logo, this choose to conquer. Greg seemed to be a bit fond of that. And
I love it.
I said, well, we could have said, maybe conquer.
Maybe. A little more ambivalent than the shirt was very decisive.
Yeah, maybe, does that sound like good advice? Does that sound like winning advice?
Yeah, that's right.
Maybe.
If you feel like it today. If not, don't worry about it. Don't conquer. Just go back to bed.
Yeah, win if it's convenient.
Yeah.
Train if it's convenient.
Why not?
What advice do you give the champions at the gym, the people that tend to do the best? What kind of advice do they tend to follow from you?
Yeah, just that. Go to bed if you want. No, those guys are... So I can tell champions pretty early on by the way they react to what I ask them to do. And so what I mean by that is if I ask you to do 10 push-ups, and this sounds cliche, but it's so true, they'll do 12. Especially people like John Jones, Holly Holm. These are people that will, when the rest of us will go in the mountains and run. And while the rest of us are walking back to our cars, Holly will run back to the car just to do a point. And it's that kind of just... I want to do the extra thing. I want to do what everybody isn't doing. I think that really separates them, great fighters, from extraordinarily great fighters.
That makes a lot of sense. I had this thought. I don't know if I've ever talked about this on camera. I don't recall. But I had this thought that if you think of what your real human potential, or at least the people that are potential maximizers, the people that tend to really lean into that and, run that extra mile there, do much more than's expected. Whatever that limitation is, maybe that's not their true potential even, but they're doing a hell of a lot better with it than most people are, and almost anybody. And so if you thought about your real potential of what a human's capable of doing, including their foibles and shortcomings that everybody has, and then you look at what a normal person does, that chasm. And I don't know the right ratio, but my rule of thumb in my head is that if you made an 80% effort, you don't get anything close to 80% of the outcome. If you think of what a maximum effort is,
right.
We'll talk about Holly, shout out to Holly or John. You think of what a maximum effort looks like versus that, say an 80% effort, you still worked pretty hard.
Yes.
But you don't get anything close to 80% of, do you get 80% of the same trophies or 80% of the championship? Like, hell no.
No, that's correct.
I don't even think you don't even get anything like 50% of the outcome.
No.
And I think a person that makes that 80% effort is like, it sounds maybe too harsh or stark at first, but like that person gets like maybe 10% of the outcome.
Yeah, that's about right.
And I think a person that makes a 50% effort to be, they're getting much less than 3% of what their potential is. It's not 3%.
I couldn't agree more. There's no doubt about that. Because again, you're going to do it or you're not, really. And I think there's a lot to that. So for me, there really is no 80% effort. There is either you're not doing what I asked you, which is fine. Like you can do 100%. But when you're doing, again, cliche, but so true, when you're doing 120%, that last little 20% you do over everybody else, to me, after all these years, is the difference. Like that's the thing where I see, the people that consistently do that, not like today I feel like you were saying, today I do feel like doing an extra 20%, but people that do that consistently all the time, those are the ones that you just see them rise. I mean, even if they don't have the same physical ability, you just see them rise. And in the fighting world, Rocky Marciano was just a great example of that. Like the guy wasn't the best boxer ever. Most people could outbox him, but he would do like 8-month camps. He was such Emmanuel Stewart called him an overachiever. I think that's the greatest descriptive word for him ever. He would, again, not physically super talented. I mean, he was a great athlete that he could keep up this incredible pace, and every punch he threw was meant to kill you, which a lot of people can't do. But he would dedicate the time to doing that. And so a guy that's, a mediocre boxer was one of the greatest heavyweight champions ever, just because of that, just because I'm going to work 20% harder than everybody else. It was impressive.
If I'm being too harsh about this, walk it back a little. But when I think of, in my business brain says, if a person out there, a lot of people would be capable of making 10 million a year if that was their focus. If they lived that, if they did the extra push-ups, they did the extra running, they made the effort to educate themselves and implement that. A lot of people can make 10 million. A lot of people do make 10 million a year, and a lot more certainly could if that was their focus in life. Big if that was their focus in life. And then you see some schmuck that, they make 10 grand a month and they think they're average individual income is only 43 grand. I'm making more than double. That, almost triple. Make 120 grand, bro. I'm making triple what the average is. So, all right, but you're making maybe 1% or 1.25% of what you could be making. And the analog in my head about your industry is a person that's making that kind of effort is, well, they're not even a real fighter. They're a Denny's manager or something.
Those are the people that like to tell people of the opposite sex or the same sex that they're the best fighter. And you know what I mean? Like they like to go, if you're a guy, you go to the bar, I'm a cage fighter, to attract. Yeah, it's much more for show than for go. And again, it's about your potential, like you just hit on. Like, yeah, that's great. But really, what does that say about you? Are you reaching your potential? No. So why? I mean, if you might as well just listen, if you told me you made, $200,000 a month, I'm not going to check it. That's fine. You don't have to, whatever. But
I'll never be that poor, for the record.
That's right. But the point is that it really has to be about accountability with yourself. Like you have to sit at the end of the day and say, I could have ran an extra 2. And those are the same people that we're talking about that always blame everybody else when something goes on, instead of saying, like some of my top level fighters, I never hear blame for anybody but themselves. They'll say, oh, I didn't do this, or I wish I would have performed better there. But they never point to you and go, you're the one, you know what I mean? Like those high level functioning people do that. And then again, the ones that give 50% effort when it goes wrong, well, it wasn't because I gave 50% effort, because you didn't prepare me well enough or whatever. So yeah, it's if you're going to do that, that's okay. But just know that's who you are. Like, I'm lazy, I'm mediocre at everything, which is fine. If you want to accept that, then cool. But if that's not about your world, then don't accept it.
I really love that you say that. I have very similar thought that I've said for years. There's like, if that's who you are, like it's better to just accept that and be at peace with it. Why have cognitive dissonance and like pretend that you're going to do something profoundly different or make a, extraordinary effort that maybe it's just, success is not for everyone.
That's right.
Success is not for everyone. It may or may not be for you, but I think success is a lifestyle choice. And, back to that corporate low is I think is a choice. You could choose to conquer. You could choose to do more. You could choose to make an extra effort to do something exceptional, but it's quite delusional to fantasize about exceptional outcomes while engaging in mediocre behaviors.
That's what a brilliant line. And then to be upset when it doesn't meet your expectations. Well, you need to reframe that. But what a brilliant line.
So if you're dedicated to being a loser, and some people are, right? If you're dedicated to being a loser, at least be at peace with it, you poor thing. At least be at peace with it. Say, you know what? I'm going to make a pretty mediocre effort in life. And occasionally, maybe I'll accidentally get a smidgen more than I deserve or a smidgen less. You can make a pretty mediocre effort. And if that's the level of your performance, then you'd expect to have pretty mediocre results. You'd expect to have a pretty average significant other. You have some pretty average kids that are, mediocre IQ. I think, something that we touched on, we've been training the past couple of days, and something that we has come up is, looking for those opportunities to do more, or doing more than a reasonable person would ever expect of you, or more than an exceptional person would even expect of you. That I think those obstacles, those frustrations or frictions, I think that a person's success would be proportional to the size of the obstacles they're able to overcome. That's how I think
so.
about it.
I agree. I think that's right.
There's a lot of things that I don't feel like doing necessarily. I might not feel like it.
Right.
But I'm like, well, your success in life is going to be proportional to the size of the obstacles or the opportunities that you're able to conquer or overcome or find a way around or whatever that might be. And not find a way around like, to like sneakily trick the system. That's not sustainable, but find a way around that you've mastered a skill set that will allow you to get a certain result consistently,
For sure.
And I just kind of focus on that when I think to myself, I don't feel like doing this or that. I mean, I have those thoughts frequently. I have a few days a week. I have a thought like that. Hey, I don't feel like doing this or that. And I say, the success gods don't care about my feelings.
That's right. That's right. And it's very interesting. One of the things I really like about you is you take that mentality and you take it into your training. So you're always asking me, I'll teach a technique or something. And the first thing you say is you'll work hard on it. You really master it. You sit with it. You come back on it. And then you say, how can I do it better? You're constantly looking for ways to. And so that mentality, you're going to be successful no matter what you chose. You chose the business world. You're going to be super successful. But if you took that attitude into MMA, you would be a champion. If you took it into swimming, you would be, just because you have that mentality of, okay, I think I've got this, but how can I do it? You're constantly, it's just that mindset, and giving people that mindset, I think, is so important, or just allowing them to have it, right? Like, it's your choice. You're in control of this. But if you choose that mindset, you're going to get some extraordinary things happening to you. If you don't choose it, like you said, and then you teach that to your kids, you teach them not to choose it, right? Like, so it's almost like a cycle of abuse in a way. I mean, it's not actual abuse, obviously, but it is a cycle wherein you are passing that on to your family. Just that kind of, I get up. And that doesn't mean that, you have to get up and be like, listen, everybody does 500 push-ups, because that's not it either. It's a choice they have. It's choosing, like you said, it's not feeling like it and doing it anyway.
I don't know that abuse is a bad word or an inappropriate word to describing the phenomenon. That it's certainly a self-sabotage.
Right.
You wouldn't disagree that it's certainly a self-sabotage, and it's certainly, you're passing on the habits of sabotage to the next generation.
That could be.
You can make it a moralistic discernment, is that abuse or not, but it's certainly sabotage. It's certainly not, optimizing a system or transferring a philosophy of success, a philosophy of winning to the next generation. And it's just unnecessary. I think this thought came from Nietzsche. I know you're a bit of a philosophy nerd as well. So I think I got this thought from Nietzsche, wherever he got it before him. But, Nietzsche has this, I'm paraphrasing, but he has a quote along the lines that a person doesn't mind suffering, that it's not suffering that is bad, but suffering for no reason. It's unfortunate to be suffering without reward, or to not be rewarded for the suffering that a person might endure. And that's what makes somebody feel hopeless or really depressed. You don't mind suffering if you get a significant prize, trophy, belt, award, rewards that come with it. That's part of the pride of earning that success or earning your place in the world that way.
Yeah. Pointless suffering is one that is hard to swallow. Yeah. I think so. And I think there's a wisdom you get from that suffering that you don't necessarily get from pointless suffering. We both know people that have gone through traumatic events, and some of them come out as like if you talk to them, it has enlightened them. They understand that part of humanity now, or lack of humanity. And then there's some people that have gone through that suffering and they're just angry and they're mean about it. They didn't learn anything except that they're upset all the time. And there's an underlying anger to them because they've suffered without any kind of, reward's a strong word, but even like most things worth doing do have suffering codified in it. Religion, right? Like if you're very into that, if you're a Zen person, you're staring at walls. If you're a Christian person, you have all of these different rituals you can go through that kind of use suffering as a teaching tool. So I think it's a wonderful thing to say, I don't want to do that, but I'm going to suffer through it. And when I come out, hopefully I've learned something. Just approaching it that way. Whereas if you approach it as, like we were saying, like, oh, it's just the way the world, and there's nothing you learn from it. There's nothing you're trying to extrapolate from that. Then it's such a negative thing. And as like I was saying, watching you go through that, even you're a little injured at the moment, but you're still driving hard on your training. Watching you go through that process the way you do it has been is very inspiring. I enjoy watching it.
Well, that's a big compliment from you, and I appreciate that. Maybe you'd share a few bullet points. Some of these people watch me for hundreds of hours over time, and I think it might be interesting because I spend a lot of time talking to them about my philosophies or business or things that I think they would do. So sometimes it's interesting when I have someone that's coaching me or teaching me. I think they find that an interesting perspective to hear. What is Derek like as the student or the person learning in the situation.
Well, and I think that also shows like the contentment within your character, right? You're okay, I want to learn how to do this. I'm going to get some experts, some of the best fighters in the world and some of the better trainers. And just watching you're so accomplished in so many worlds to see your humility and I want to really learn this, and then watch you begin to really excel on it. I think that's a great lesson. So if they've just been listening to you, they should be watching you too. And obviously they can't see, but just watching how you are not satisfied, and not in a negative way, like, oh, that's really cool. I want to learn how to do that. Oh, that's really, and then smartly doing it step by step by step and showing the same kind of tenacity that you've obviously shown in the business world is really cool. And so I think that says a lot about people, because anybody can say anything. I can say, listen, Derek, did you know that I can run a marathon in under 3 hours? And you would be like, I'm going to have to say, I'm not really so sure about that. But I can say it and you can argue, right? But until we see me actually try it, then it's all academic, right? Like we're just arguing ridiculousness. So that to know that you have this success there, but you're not stopping there, right? You're continuing that throughout, I think is very valuable for people, because they can be like, oh, well, he's just talented at making money. He's just talented at real estate. He's just talented at this. But to watch you, well, hold on, there's more to it than that. He's a grinder. He's a worker. He educates himself. He pushes. To watch you in a new world excel the way you are, I think that should say a lot to the people that follow you.
I really learned a lot. I only started martial arts 15 months ago right now.
Incredible.
And I never had one, boxing class, MMA class, jiu-jitsu, no martial arts class ever, not one time ever in my life before then. So November 22nd, 2021. And it just sucks at first.
That's right. You don't necessarily want to do it.
You watch some world champions do something on television, and and they're extremely talented, and you know what that looks like firsthand because you're living your life with these people. And they're extremely talented, and they're so talented that the number of redundancies and lessons learned in their head. There's if this doesn't work, we'll do these 6 other things,
That's
and
right.
if that doesn't work, there's 3 more, and so you don't even understand their full brilliance until you get further down the rabbit hole. It's just, as a spectator, you don't even understand.
Yeah, that's a fact.
So that So you watch that and it looks, so graceful or beautiful, some of it, that it's, as if done by magic. And, but then you try to do that yourself and you're like, oh shit. And, you think there's, you become aware quickly that, there's, a lot to learn. So,
Yes.
and, in 15 months later, I have dichotomous thoughts about that. I think very few people in the world went from, no formal training to doing as well as I am. I think very few people have done better than I have in the last 15 months, which sounds cocky, but I believe it's true.
I'll concur.
But then I also have another thought that, I still kind of suck compared to some of my training partners. I can hold my own because I'm bigger than many of them, but I still kind of suck in terms of skills. It takes just years just years and years.
Well, I think it's that, like, if you saw the equivalency of, somebody extremely rich and you didn't have that much money, usually, and I'm not saying always, but you need to actually learn then how to build your wealth and how to do all that stuff. It's not just going to be like, oh, well, it looks like, how does he make all these great decisions? How do they know how they're always winning on the stock market and all this kind of stuff? Well, almost always.
It only took me 35 years.
Right, exactly. Right. Yeah. So like if I did that, if I jumped right into that, you would be going, well, you're doing good. However, there's a lot of stuff, and that's it. Yeah. It really takes time and experience. And as as good as you are now for the short time that you've been doing it, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Forrest Griffin sent me a couple of texts. He saw I got my blue belt last year, and he sent me a couple of texts. And we got on the phone, had a little brief chat, and Forrest says, so Derek, congratulations. And he said, you keep working hard like that. He's like, in 7 or 8 years, you're going to have a little start. I thought he was going to say something really nice.
Right. No, that's fuck you, Forrest. Forrest is one of my favorite people on the planet.
He's a good man. Shout out to Forrest.
Yeah, we love him. But yeah, that sounds like something he would say. He's always poking. He's always poking. He's so funny. Cracks me up.
7, 8 years, you have a
a little start. Yeah, you'll be all right.
I thought he'd say you'd be good or something.
Right? Yeah, you'll be.
7, 8 years.
You'll be. Yeah, no, that's our Forrest. We love him.
The business stuff, a lot of people think is, like a highlight reel or something. That you're touching on that. And a lot of things I do are very boring. It's very conservative. If you can't be bored, if you can't tolerate, doing boring things, then don't worry, your competition can. Your competition will do boring things, and they'll have the success that you could have had because, they showed a dedication to overcome obstacles that most people didn't have the attention span or the will to push through. So, if you're not willing to sit around and read thousands of pages of financial statements and more thousands and more thousands and, look at the boring details and understand the micro nuances of what's happening in a circumstance, then, you're really unprepared. You'd be, you and I had a brief conversation about this earlier today of people having a confusion of, like a proficiency or, an amateur level proficiency, and they think they're a master of something,
Right. A very common thing, at least in fighting.
What do you see? Yeah. In your areas of life, what sort of, errors of judgment or what sort of outcomes do you see those people experience that suffer that thought?
Well, usually those are the ones that tell me they're going to be world champions. Those are the ones that always come up and be like, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be a world champion. As soon as they even say those words and they're that kind of personality, I go, okay. And I know exactly what they're going to be. They're going to have success in the small level here. They're going to come up to that level because they're kind of the right personality ingredients, or they're not being mentored correctly. They're never going to get past this thing. So they'll do okay till, and it depends on their physical talent. But once they hit that wall, and you can watch it over and over in MMA career, they just, all of a sudden it's like the game passes them by. Like they get to that level and everybody else is accelerating and they stay right there. And that's really the end result of that style of person. It's like, oh, I've got this. I've got it figured out. But no worries. Like I'm obviously a very high level at and you're like, yeah. And even the highest level people constantly need to be reevaluating what they're doing, adding stuff. Because in our world, there's coaches like me, much better than me, watching videotape and saying, oh, here's what that guy does over and over and over. So don't be surprised when somebody catches you doing it because you never took the time to evolve and grow. And because you had it. Oh, I got this figured out. So I find that in two areas. One, which is very normal, but sometimes people get what I always call champitis, which is they're actually kind of way up in that level and they'll let that infection get into their brain. And when they do, they start losing, their performances go down, and everybody starts passing them.
I'm still absorbing that myself, those permutations of, kind of failure models. It's that person that thinks they're going to do something extraordinary and then kind of, hits that ceiling, as you say, that it sounds like that's a future Denny's manager.
That's exact, because that's all you can be, right? You're not going to get anywhere past that. Once you have it all figured out, that's as far as you go.
My last job, I got a job at Walmart. I was 18, and I was unloading trucks and stocking shelves, which no one was. I looked around that loading dock. It's 3 a.m. in the Midwest. There's snow. It's winter. And I got hired for seasonal help, not even a full-time job. I got hired for, but temporary, seasonal help for Thanksgiving and Christmas. So, it's December and it's snowing and it sucks and it's cold. And I looked around this loading dock, it's, 3 a.m. We're unloading a second or third truck. And I thought to myself, no one is here because they wanted to be. This was no one's goal, which is not a flattering thing to think about yourself.
No, but it's honest though.
Yeah. And some of them were 2 or 3 times my age. And I thought, no one planned to be here. This was no one's goal. And I thought, well, if I can't outwork every single person here, if I can't outperform these people, who could I outperform?
Right.
If I can't outperform a bunch of third shift hookups at Walmart, then, am I qualified for a better life?
Right.
Am I really qualified to have better circumstances? And I kind of really took that to heart, that, and some people, they just stay right there. Some of those people have been doing that job 12, 15 years. And in 4 months, they gave me a promotion I was managing 2 departments.
Of course. And
you had to be there. The corporate policy was you had to be there at least 6 months before you were eligible for promotion. And plenty of people been there 20 years and never got any promotion.
Right.
In 4 months, they gave me 2 departments to manage. And then I did that job for about 7 months. And they gave me another promotion to support manager. You're supposed to be there at least 2 years. I was there 11 months. So I was 19 and I had, keys to the doors and keys to a lot of things. And I could do just about anything on the computer, order anything without permission, or I didn't abuse that, obviously, but they trusted me to make intelligent decisions, and I tried to let them know they made a good decision to put me in that position, But that also gave me access to the financial statements, and I'm looking at financial statements going back, 20 years or something, and I thought to myself that if I was working as hard as I am here on my own projects, how much money would I be making in the future? And I thought, if I kept working at this pace here, the district manager told me that, you can't give me another promotion for at least 3 years. Now, if he would have said that I had to have, mastered these 3 skills, my brain's very open to that. It's like, I can't give you a promotion until you master these 3 skills.
Makes sense.
All right, fair enough.
Right.
You get you chipping away at that.
Right.
But when they say 3 years, I don't want to hear a time constraint.
Yeah.
I don't like that time constraint thing. So I joke with Jake about, well, can I have my black belt next year? Which sounds like a joke, but and he's like, sure, you just got to tap out, start tapping out all the UFC heavyweights and
that's right.
A couple other people's names. Maybe I won't say right now. It's just, if you could tap those guys out consistently, sure, we can give you a black belt.
There you go.
I'm like, occasionally he'll mention a time. I said, don't tell me a time. Tell me what I have to accomplish.
Yeah, that's that.
Don't tell me a time constraint. Tell me what I have to do.
That is how I think exceptional people think, right? Because the system is made for the aggregate. It's not made for the extraordinary individual, even though I really believe that every individual with enough willpower can be extraordinary. But again, it's about that choice. So those time constraints exist for normal people, not for people, obviously, that can run large things in very short time frames. And I don't like that either. I don't like any kind of, and I do that with my fighters. I don't ever say, this person needs to fight this way. I watch them. I ask questions. I train them and see what they do. I watch them spar so I can get a sense of what they're doing. And that way I don't say, okay, well, in X amount of time, these people will get these skills. I will say, this is the style of fighting that I think that will be the best service for them. And then they can do it as quick or as slow as based on their effort as possible. They can kind of master that end of it. But yeah, the whole okay, we're going to work on this for 6 months. It's not individualistic. It's for a large group of people. And again, I think any person can be extraordinary if they if they make the right choices and they really go all in on something.
I think so. I'm 95% agree with that, where I'm like, whoever the hell you are, you could do better.
Right.
All right. There is something called the IQ test, and that's controversial to some people, but your placement in that IQ horizon, that makes a difference between if your IQ is 40 points above the average, they call that a genius. Mm-hmm. And if it's 40 points below, you're going to have a hard time, taking care of basic hygiene.
Right.
And that's just reality. So could that person do better? Yeah, I think that person could do better too.
Yeah.
You could still find a way to improve their life and master a shower. And I'm not saying it disrespectfully.
No, 100%. Yeah, and that's extraordinary for them. And for me, that's great. I love it.
Practice good hygiene. You know, maybe help your life a lot. You know, think about some other, what else could you do? What else? Yeah. Same thought that everybody else has to have if you want to be better at something. So I think wherever you are, there's some things that I had some natural skills or abilities. And then, well, how can I use that for greater effect? And there's some things that I'm kind of deficient in. I'm not good at remembering names. So you know what? I make sure that I have friends and allies that can remember names for me. So, that helps.
Yeah.
That helps. There's some things that I can do with numbers in my head that, however much training somebody has, they're probably not going to be able to do that, Or a guy like John probably has some natural talents and clearly layers and layers of skills and hard work on top of that. But there's a few things that maybe he was, his body could do that other people just can't do.
For sure. Yeah, and I think that's dead on. But the relativity of it, I think, is the important thing for when you're dealing with people, at least the way I deal with people, knowing that, martial arts can take somebody. For me, it's martial arts, right? Somebody can take somebody, mediocre here and actually make them pretty good at within the confines of whatever physical and mental limitations they come with. But they can still do, like you said, still do better. And for me, it's extraordinary if you can pull your stuff together because you have a hard time doing that. That's extraordinary. If you can then accelerate, that's even more extraordinary. In training, you have this thing where you're just trying to survive. Like it's like running. Like I just want to make, let's say 5 miles is my first time I'm running. So I just want to make 5 miles. Well, then pretty soon you can make 5 miles. The second step is you're in the middle of it. You can do the 5 miles now, but you're not exactly winning races or anything, but you can do it. You can do it and you're pretty good at it. And then once you get comfortable at that, you can really try to win. You can accelerate and say, okay, well, I'm going to see what's the best I can do now that I know how to do it. And I think that can be reflected in anyone's life at any point. But again, you're not gonna. We don't all have your brain. We don't all have physical gifts that some of the other fighters have as well. But we can accelerate within our own life. I'm a pretty big believer in that.
Anybody could choose to do better.
Yeah,
I think success is a lifestyle choice.
100%.
In a first world country, millionaire is a lifestyle choice. For those focused on money, $1 million is not what it used to be.
Right.
Inflation's on your side. In a first world country, $1 million net worth is a lifestyle choice. If a person chose to focus on that, of course you could do that. If you could do it once, you could get your second million easier.
Right.
And if you found 2, probably you could find 5. Momentum is on your side now. Mm-hmm. And so, it depends what a person wants. And some numbnuts say, Derek, there's more to life than money. There is, but not much.
Sure.
There is, but not much. A single $1 million adds 11 years to your life expectancy. People that have $1 million or more adds 11 years to your life expectancy because it gives you a safer environment, keeps you farther away from crime and hazards, like chemical hazards, natural disasters, etc. You can choose to live in a nicer environment. You can send your kids to a better school so that they don't have to have some of the frustrations that perhaps you did. You could get them a good coach. You get them, additional coaching or whatnot. Anything new that I want to learn, I want to find the best people in the world that are doing that. And I need to make myself useful to them that it's in their best interest to spend a bit of time and, help me be, a bit better.
Right.
So help banish some of my ignorance and do it in the best way possible.
Well, and I think there's you hit the nail on the head there with health outcomes as well. I mean, if you're able to afford better insurance, go to better hospitals. I mean, so much of that, especially as we get older, like that stuff doesn't seem important when you're 19. But as you head into your mid 40s and get into your 50s and 60s, like health outcomes mean a lot. And money is directly tied to that. If you don't think your socioeconomic position has anything to do with your health outcomes, you need to take a basic public health course.
Money is the difference of your daughter having crooked teeth or braces. Money is the difference to help a parent or another loved one with an emergency in their life, or a medical emergency, or something else. So money, it's a lifestyle choice, and so money doesn't buy happiness. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. At a minimum, it makes misery a lot more enjoyable.
Tolerable for sure. Yes, that's 100% correct.
There's another stupid one that comes up. They say that I'd rather be happy than have. Do you think that poor people are happier than rich people?
It's not mutually exclusive. Just because you have money doesn't mean that you have money, you're instantly miserable. Like, you're still a person. You still enjoy doing things. So you just have more access to do those things that you enjoy doing. Again, those people probably have not grown up poor, or they grow up poor with the myth that poor is nobility or whatever. And listen, there are people that have been screwed over. Yes, these are all true, but there is information out there now currently, that you can improve your life just by getting that information and following through on it. So there's not a lot of excuse not to do that. At any point, you can try to find that. And it doesn't have to be super high level either. It could just be, a guy, some dorky guy with big ears with his friend saying, hey, change your mindset and look around and see what you can do to improve, and just put your energy there. Just start with that. And then it'll all, like you said, your momentum will start building up. Oh, what about this guy? What can he teach me? Where can I go here? But you're at least actively self-improving. And that includes your financial situation, not just your lifetime, or like we like philosophy, not just that. Your spiritual stuff is your spiritual stuff. But man, if you can't get a car to drive to church because you can't afford one, that's a bear.
Share a little bit about your background. How did you go into building one of the most notable gyms? People around the world know about your gym. You had so many champions that came from there, and I just to name drop on your behalf, John Jones, you've trained forever, Holly Holm, Carlos Condit, Andre Arlovsky. I know I'm missing several. There's many champions that came from your gym. Michelle Watterson won her Invicta Championship. Frank Mir, other world champion. Yeah, many more. I'm sure I'm missing many. How did that start? That you built such a brand name and such a reputation in that industry. Being a coach and a trainer and running that facility.
Well, in a lot of ways, it's exactly what we were talking about. So there were no jiu-jitsu instructors in the late 80s, early 90s in Albuquerque, New Mexico, no Brazilian jiu-jitsu instructors. The revolution really hadn't hit us yet. So that I had to figure out. So I opened my school up. First of all, I was a young kid growing up in the South Valley of Albuquerque, New Mexico, and it kind of rough and tumble there. I love the South Valley. I'm very proud to be from that place, but it's rough and tumble. And so, learning to fight was kind of part of my childhood, and experimenting with different martial arts and doing all this kind of thing but it's the same thing. It was like, well, I didn't do great that fight. So what do I need to do to fix that, to make it better, to look? So I'm always looking for, okay, how can I be better? What else can I learn? And so I had to there was no information available. Like the UFC came out. My students wanted to compete. So we would go to these grappling tournaments and very early MMA tournaments. But there was nobody. The Gracies, obviously, they're my heroes. They knew what was going on. And I always say, when I first saw the UFC, the Gracies were like PhDs, and I was in kindergarten. They had it figured out. They still do. So I had to then, Hoist isn't here to teach me, right? I'm a kid in Albuquerque. So I had to figure it out. So I would figure out techniques, take them to these competitions, see how they would go in the competitions. Sometimes we were doing things a little bit differently. So we would catch people unaware or off guard a little bit. And then they would do techniques to us, and I would bring those techniques back to the gym, and I'd try to figure out, okay, well, how do I get around them? So even when I didn't have information, I had to kind of come up with my own way to self-improve, because there was nobody to teach me. So that kind of spirit is what's really kept me relevant over those last 30 years, because a lot of people, if they have instructors that taught them, well, once that limit of that knowledge is reached, then they'll come up with a couple of cool things themselves. But once that limit is reached, then there's not a lot of place for them to go. And again, the game passes them by. But if you're always curious and you're always looking for a new way to do something, or how can I make that more efficient, or, how can I be better at teaching, whatever it is, all of these things have that mentality. So when I was a young kid, I started out with that mentality of just being purely curious all the time. Well, this martial art isn't working because in this fight, I do Aikido, but when I tried to grab this guy's wrists, he was just punching me in the face. So that's not going to work. Like, I need to figure out something else besides just running on him again.
That sounds like a very useful insight.
Yeah. Well, I went through several of those very useful insights, unfortunately. But again, kind of came out with that attitude. And I used to, and it was always about just being able at first, just to, again, it's that I'm just trying to run just to make a living. I used to say, if I had 10 students and they each paid me $100, that's like $1,000 a month. I would fantasize what I do with them. Okay, this much for rent. Da, da, da. But then when you start getting to that level, you say, well, what if I do more? You know what I mean? Now, what if I had 20 students and I charge this? And eventually, as you succeed and you start, momentum gets on your side and you're turning your corner, that expanded. But at the beginning, it was just, and it's kind of really still is, a curiosity thing for me. The UFC, all of these different Bellator, all of these things are just laboratories, basically, where you get to go and try new cool techniques that you think of or you've seen variations of. And if they work, great. And if they don't, then we go back to the drawing board and do it again. But that process is so fun and so intense. And you really feel like you're like peering into the underpinnings of the world, because these are the techniques that you use to win, to conquer, to do whatever. And you get to study it and figure it out and discover it. It's just, it's a high that I'll never get over. So that sustained me. And that really got me into my journey, with just that mental attitude of it. And then it's been great. I mean, it's given me everything. The martial arts and coaching has given me so many wonderful friends, and it continues to give. Here I am, 175 years old. I look pretty good for my age, but I just make it another great friend, and I'm having another great experience. You know what I mean? And all of it's from the martial arts. I feel so lucky all the time to have had this job and to meet the people that I've met and to have the doors open that I've had open for me because of just that passion and curiosity and wanting to try to do the right thing for myself, for my family and my friends. And yeah, here I am. I'm hanging out with you're an exceptional individual, and I'm in the middle of Chicago that I love. And yeah, it's great. It's awesome.
I've thought about, because how fortunate that I've been with some of the people that I get to learn from, that, Uncle Hoist does come over and
yeah, it's amazing.
He'll be back in a month.
He's the best.
But Tito made a comment to me when Tito and I spent a few days here together a while back, and Tito Ortiz, and shout out to Tito and Uncle Hoist. What up, guys? Yeah. And Tito made a comment. He's already world champion back in the day and defending his belt. And he says, there's not a real MMA gym. He's like, I got to drive, an hour and a half each way to go to my kickboxing coach and, over in LA. And I got to drive an hour the other way to go to this other class. And,
right.
There's not a real MMA gym. He's got these separate disciplines, and he's trying to fit the pieces together in his own head. And he had, the level of, the expertise that you have today didn't exist
right
at that time.
Right. That's correct.
So he kind of shared that frustration of, you got to try to learn here and try to go there, and and this is again the mindset of a guy that's already multi-time world champion, but he's like, well, I got to do better. I got to do better because competition is also working hard.
That's right.
So that really stuck with me, and to be able to learn from him and Chuck and 30 other great people that have helped me out some in martial arts. It's kind of unimaginable to have those sort of social resources and intellectual resources that, when we stay up late and I pay attention to I ask you the same damn thing 8 times.
Right.
So a little bit different this way, a little bit different this way. Was that better? Is that better? What can I do better? What else could I do better? I do have that curiosity, but in my mind, it feels disrespectful to have such, wisdom and resources and not really take that to heart, or, find those pieces and have the respect to implement them, as best I can.
Right. Which you do well. And you follow that same dictum of, like you said, how can I do that better? But you're also experimenting the whole time. You're asking questions. Can I grab this? Can this do? Can I? And that just shows not just an understanding, but that curiosity and that passion, which is so, so important. For me, it's so important in life just to have. because what else are you? I mean, TV gets boring for me pretty quick, and if you're not like working towards something and having fun doing it, I'm just not a TV guy. I can't sit on the couch.
Once in a while, somebody asks me, you watch, what are your favorite movies? And I'm like, I don't watch one movie per year.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Not one. I don't watch one movie per year. So, Derek, what do you watch on television? I got a couple of big televisions. I never turn them on. Once in a while, I watch the UFC fights.
There you go.
I watch the fights occasionally, and usually one of the fighters is here with me, and I didn't travel that weekend to go to the fights, so we're just watching them together. Those are funny moments on occasion if their name comes up, and
you're like, yeah, he's right there.
Yeah. There's a moment where I don't know if it's Daniel Cormier, one of the announcers made a comment of we're watching the Kazmat fight or Shmaev, and they said Gilbert Burns is watching from somewhere right now, and he's sitting right there.
That's funny.
We kind of looked at each other and laughed.
He is watching from somewhere. That is correct.
We had a few moments like that. One with Michelle as well, where her name came up when we were watching together.
That's funny.
But I don't watch television. I don't know if it's on for a couple hours per month or something, and I like being engaged in things. Yeah. I think only boring people are bored. My brain is always active and doing something, and you seem to be that type of person as well. That
definitely, yeah.
I got plenty of activity that I don't need to be entertained.
To our detriment sometimes. It's very hard I don't know, I can't speak for you, but I'll sit down sometimes and it's just hard for me to sit. I'm like, and I want to go, maybe you should just relax and chill a bit.
Imagine that chill doesn't pay much. There's a lot of chill,
that's right.
There's a lot of chill people out there that are sleeping on sidewalks, and they're chilling the most.
Doesn't pay much is another great line.
There's no urgency,
right? No
urgency among the homeless to go anywhere quick. They're just there. That I don't think they're highly compensated for their chilling.
No, that's.
So imagine the life of somebody that they don't have much activity in their brain, and they're just like, they need to be entertained.
Right.
They need to play a video game, obsessively, or watch a TV show obsessively. That, it's hard to get something done like that. Imagine the level of brain function that a person's experiencing, that instead of having that curiosity to like, oh, I wonder how this works, or, oh, I should, let me go work on that and see if I can, replicate that by myself, and what other lessons I could learn from that. And my brain's always trying to solve those problems, and you're that type of person. You're always looking to solve a problem. And, what would your life be like if you were concerned about, like, I am bored. What's on TV that could entertain me or distract me from reality? And a person that behaves that way, that you're back to those self-sabotage mechanisms. You're making a choice to settle for less instead of to go earn more for yourself. You're making a choice that your children are going to struggle because you wanted to be entertained instead of be productive. And maybe you don't think it's a choice. You're like, hey, man, I'm just a human. I just want to chill sometime. Go chill, man. I love it when my competition's real chill.
Yeah.
I love it when, wouldn't it be great if you had to go fight a guy, or any of your champions are going to go defend their belt, and their opponent's been doing, I've been training too much, been relaxing, sleeping a lot.
Yeah, that's right.
Not much training, just a lot of sleeping.
I'd be all right with that. So go chill, everyone that is competing with us. Chill out, relax.
Go chill, man. Go.
Yeah.
No worries.
Go work, you go.
No worry. But if you choose that life, and it is a choice, somebody else will have the perfect partner that you could have had. Somebody else will have that perfect romantic partner, and they'll be having that person's children instead of yours.
Fact.
Somebody else is going to have a pretty daughter, a good-looking son. The kids look good, their brain works, they're engaged, they're industrious, they're doing something that you'd be proud if they were your kid, but they won't be, because you didn't earn that spot. You were chilling, man. Somebody else will have all the rewards in life that you could have had. So they won't mind.
Yeah.
They won't mind. They'll never know. They're just going to find a better option than you. But you did that to yourself. That was a lifestyle choice. And for those of you that are more inclined, that you realize that life is probably shorter than you'd like. Fact. And, every moment counts. You don't get a redo. You don't get do-overs. Every moment counts. And there's those little accumulation of seemingly, unimportant moments that you think you have an abundance of until they've passed, and it's too late. and you failed to create the productivity, you failed to to produce something, to learn something, to earn something, you failed to do that, and then you failed to compound the gains as well. And you can never get those moments back. Einstein talked about compounding interest as like the eighth wonder of the world. Right. And, Buffett's made so much money. He's over $100 billion and, investing in boring things over time. And you'll never have those moments back. You never have those moments back. And you can tell yourself little things like, it's, money doesn't matter, or, the money's not, it's not everything, but it will extend your life. It'll extend the life of your friends and family, and give you a lot more comforts that, the number one thing you get is you don't have to spend your time with people you don't like. That is the greatest
100%.
gift.
That is a wonderful gift.
But it is. I mean, it really is.
Yeah,
there's been times in my life where I felt compelled to be around certain people, and I'm like, wow, this sucks. I got to do better. So
that's correct. That's great. And what a horror it would be to look back and realize it when you've already, if you're listening to this now and you're in your 30s or 40s or 20s or even your 50s, 60s. You still have time if you right now, you know what I mean? If you go, like now's the time to go. But man, 97, and you look back and you go, I sure wish you know what I mean? It's just that regret of, well, I wonder what I could have done had I applied myself. I wonder. And I'm sure some people will be happy with like, oh, I could if I wanted to. The usual, like I get that a lot. Oh, I could do your job if I wanted. I could be a world champion if I wanted to. I just, I'm much happier doing whatever I'm doing. Yeah, cool if you are, if that's true, but you wouldn't have mentioned it to me if you were really that much happier or you weren't worried about it. So yeah, that 97-year-old guy that looks back, that would be a nightmare because you're like trapped. Conversely, if you look back and you're like, you know what, I did everything I could. I'm exhausted. I am ready to go. And I know that my family for generations is going to be okay because of what I did while I was doing my thing. That's the opposite, right? That's empowering, and you're ready to check out and there's no regrets.
Yeah, unfortunately, and I 100% agree, but unfortunately, I think there's a bit of an egoic defense mechanism in most people. The type of person that does all that chilling and, not into productivity, not into learning, They also, tell them they hide that thought later. My mother was this way. I'd watch my mother. She's about 5'5" and over 300 pounds. In a moment, once in a while, she'd have a moment of clarity where she'd be like, if I don't lose some weight, I'm going to die early. And she'd have that moment on occasion. And this is my interpretation. I don't know if it's true, but I think it's true. And I tried to reflect on it very, as objectively as I could. And the best model that I've constructed is I think that when, this was a high IQ person, not pragmatically useful, never did anything, but high IQ, good at shows like Jeopardy or some shit, right. Like sit around and have a lot of right answers and, or, do absolutely nothing with her own life and then blame other people.
Sure.
But she had the IQ that once in a while she'd have a moment of clarity and be like, wow, I'm really fucking up. And this is going to end bad. And I think she just tried to bury that as quick as possible, quicker and quicker, and then distract herself from even having that thought. Because for her to fix the problem, she'd have to admit that she didn't fix the problem for the last 30 years.
Right.
Or, the last 20 years or 30 years. And then she would think about that opportunity cost or the loss that would have, the what could have been but wasn't.
Right.
And it was too psychologically painful to accept that, which would be necessary to go back and
fix it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. And I think you're dead on.
I think a lot of people do that to themselves. So they find a way to distract themselves from the original catalyst, because to admit to themselves that they fucked up 20 years ago and continue to do so is more painful than they'd rather die early. And she did. She was 65.
Oh, sorry.
So I didn't go to her funeral. We weren't close. But
fair enough. Fair enough.
I wish we had a better relationship, but that's the relationship we had. Yes, but I learned that. I took that to heart. I'm like, it's better to be a bit more introspective, preemptively or proactively, and have that thought, wait, what could I do better?
Yeah.
What else could I do? What else could I do? And, I like my goals more than I like my ego. And I think that, for those of you that are serious about doing something, which is, it's not everybody. Success is not for everybody.
That's a fact.
Only 1 out of 100 people get to be in the top 1%. And the top 1%, I mean, that's not a world champion. That's just like, you don't suck. I mean, 50% are below average by definition.
Right. The
next 30% aren't really trying. Right. So to get to the 80th percentile of something is not difficult.
Right.
Anybody can do that, or more or less.
Mm-hmm.
So, to be in the top 1% is, you're making an effort and good for you, but it's not your best effort probably.
Right. That makes sense.
If you want to have an exceptional life, you're going to have to do some exceptional things. And those little boring details matter. That finding good coaches and mentors for whatever you want to accomplish, it matters. You can't learn everything by yourself. You don't have enough time. You can't learn it by yourself.
That's right.
You ever seen a world champion that didn't have some great coaches or some support team to help them along?
Not a one.
I asked about 200 world champions from all sorts of different Olympic sports and football and this sport and that sport and a lot of fighters. And none of them. None.
That's it.
So you ever seen it? I asked the question like this. I did it dozens of times, hundreds of times. So you ever seen anybody with an Olympic gold medal on their neck, or a big shiny championship belt on their waist, or holding a trophy high above their head, that universal sign of victory? You ever seen anybody do that didn't have some great coaches or teachers in the background? All of them.
Yeah, I've never. It's definitely an effort that takes, like Forrest was saying, a lot of time and a lot of information. I mean, having that information, it's a nice thing about having people that have lived their life too. Like you're saying, it's not just information that is, in the ivory tower somewhere, but it is information that you can see people do, use, succeed with. That to me is the correct information. So having the correct information that you can see somebody else has gone through a similar situation before or whatever it is, and then emulate that. Yeah, that's the formula for success. And if you don't use that, then like you said, that's 100% on you. Now you know the information. Maybe you didn't know that until you just watched that right now. But now that you know, there's no turning back. You can't claim ignorance anymore. You can only claim laziness. So that's a huge difference. Like, not knowing what to do is one thing. Like, I don't know how to do martial arts. I don't know how to make money, whatever it is. Okay, we'll find somebody that does, and that's your mentor. And they don't even have to be high level at first. Like for me, when I first opened my gym, it was 1,000 square feet, the whole building, and I lived in the back 200 of it. So I only had 800 square feet to teach in. So when I opened it, I was living there. And I was happy as a clam. But if I would have stayed there at my age now in a 1,000 square foot building, I wouldn't be as happy. I mean, I might probably still be a little happy, but not. I mean, we have a beautiful facility now. Me and my partner, Mike Winklejohn, is 37,000 square feet. There's dorm rooms people from all over the world come and live there. And it's in a place that I never thought it would get to. Well, partly because the sport really didn't exist when I was young, but it's all of that kind of progression, because again, I did have some great mentors and some great teachers, Mike Winklejohn being one of them, that allowed me to, coupled with my drive and my curiosity and my wanting to do better, that I think was my formula 100%. So there it is. There's the formula. You're going to need details and you're going to need to understand individual stuff, but a macro formula, get a mentor, get some good, healthy drive, and then do what they say. Don't have the mentor go, here's what you do. And you'd be like, but I think I've got it figured out. No, just do your mentor's already done the time, do that. And then after that, if you say, oh, I would do this part better, that's one thing, but don't go, because I'll see people engage in that mentorship and then, I think I've got this figured out. Like you were saying, like the guys that already got it figured out, they get to that part and they never get any farther. It's the last you hear about them.
Success is not for everyone. As I say all the time, success is not for everyone. And it may not be for you. But Greg laid out some very succinct bullet points there that it'd be hard to mess it up if you followed those bullet points, if you followed that structure. If you did what other winners did, to get where they are, if you did what other champions did to become a world champion, did what other successful business people did to earn their spot in the world, if you had higher quality thoughts in your head, you probably engage in higher quality behaviors. And if you engage in higher quality behaviors consistently, success would be a natural outcome.
Consistently is the key. That's the doing it not just one time, not like I got it figured out, but all the time. The boring, there's another great line of yours, just like the boring stuff that you have to do every day. As fighters, you got to get up and you run, and that gets old quick. Some of my fighters, Tim Kennedy hates running, hates it like he hates anything. But if I say, Tim, you had to go run, he would go and do it. So it's just consistency, doing the right thing consistently.
Thank you so much for coming through and sharing some of your experiences, some of your wisdom. I appreciate it much.
Oh, thank you for having me. I've learned a ton.
We're going to get back to our second training session of the day.
Let's go.
Some people are confused. They say, Derek, what is the 10 Commandments of Wealth? Not the 10 maybes of wealth. It's the 10 core things that you're going to need to know about in detail if you'd like to accumulate significant wealth in your lifetime. Click this link up here to find more information, exactly what is the 10 Commandments of Wealth, how is the program structured, what's inside of it, how are you going to benefit from it. If you're doing well already and you'd like to do better, click that link and find out more. There's over 100 hours of content in this program. I've interviewed dozens of world champions that shared what it took for them to win, to be the top Hall of Fame athletes in their respective areas. And I brought a lot of other superstars in there from business, people that are real world entrepreneurs that made serious money, as I have myself. We all share with you what are the foundations you're going to need to know if you want to be successful yourself. Be a chooser, not a loser. Leave a comment if you want a business or success question answered, and subscribe for even more winning.